In Look East tonight, one rule for them, one rule for the rest of us. The driver left fuming after the Prime Minister whizzes past in the fast lane.
People are being prosecuted and fined for breaking the limit, but it's all right for some others.
Hello from Amelia and me.
Also tonight, small businesses feel the squeeze as the big companies fail to pay up on time.
Keen on the rack as Ipswich are beaten at bottom of the league, Peterborough.
And how do you build a new town? Easy. Just look in the book. Hello. First tonight, the Prime Minister criticised today for apparently breaking the speed limit in Suffolk. One lawyer has said no one is above the law, not even Gordon Brown.
You'll probably remember that Gordon Brown was in the region on Monday for a whistle-stop visit to Norfolk and then Suffolk. At one stage on the A14, a driver was overtaken at speed by the PM's car and the convoy. But this was on a stretch of dual carriageway between Copdock and Claydon, where a speed limit is enforced for the safety of engineers working on the road.
The Prime Minister and his entourage arriving in Great Yarmouth on Monday. Several hours later, running late, Gordon Brown was on this stretch of the A14, heading to Ipswich. The road's restricted to 50 miles per hour for the safety of road workers. Gavin Stewart was driving at 50 when he had to pull into the left-hand lane to let Mr Brown's convoy speed by. He estimates it was travelling at 60 miles per hour.
Is there one law for one lot of people and another law for others? I thought that it was a bad example to set. You know, people are being prosecuted and fined for breaking the limit, but it's all right for some others.
It's a view also supported by other drivers we spoke to.
They make the rules, the regulations, they enact them in Parliament. Why is he exempt?
In roadworks, do the speed limit. I mean, say, because you never know when one of these blokes are going to step over the line. If you're doing 50, you've got half a chance of putting him in hospital, not in the morgue.
Suffolk SafeCam, who monitored the average speed cameras, would not reveal whether Mr Brown's car had been clocked exceeding the speed limit. So we asked an expert in defensive driving techniques if he believed it could be justified.
His driver was probably a police Class 1 advanced driver, so as far as safety is concerned, he was probably safe at that speed. But we're all aware that a speed limit is there for a purpose, and it's usually indicating that there's some form of hazard ahead of us.
Downing Street had no comment today, nor did the Highways Agency. Both referred us to Suffolk Police. We did ask for an interview with Suffolk Police, but no one was available. However, the Deputy Chief Constable has issued a statement. Jackie Cheer says police drivers who drive and escort VIPs receive additional training. The decision to increase the speed of the convoy isn't taken lightly and will have been judged to have been the safest tactic for all road users. If an offence was committed, Mr Brown's driver will be notified. But under rules applicable to the emergency services, it's highly likely an exemption will be granted. Richard Daniel, BBC Look East.
Well, earlier I spoke to Nick Freeman, a solicitor specialising in motoring offences. He's better known as Mr Loophole. I started by asking if he could get me off if I got a speeding ticket on the same day as Gordon Brown.
I think you'd be very aggrieved because there certainly isn't one law for one and one law for another. The law of the land applies to everybody, except, of course, the Queen. So Gordon Brown's driver should obey the speed limit. If, of course, there was an emergency which had presented itself and that emergency was unforeseen, then they would be entitled within the letter of the law to speed. And whether or not it was an emergency will be judged by the prosecuting authorities. But as I understand it, he was late for an appointment, and that, of course, doesn't entitle his driver to speed. And what's interesting is the suggestion is that it was the safest tactic to employ, suggesting that there was some sort of security threat. But the reports seem to say that he was simply late for an appointment.
So if he was caught on camera and he was exceeding the speed limit, it would be the police outriders and the bloke driving the car, but presumably not the Prime Minister who would face problems.
No, he wouldn't have a problem unless, of course, he'd given a specific instruction to all concerned that they should exceed the speed limit or exceed speed and drive at that speed. There was a very recent case in which a lady was convicted of death by dangerous driving, and she received a 7-year sentence, and the passenger whose car it was, who wasn't driving, received a 4-year prison sentence for causing death by dangerous driving because he was in the passenger seat, because it was his car and he'd given instruction for her to drive and to drive more quickly. So actually there is a new development in the law, but in the absence of any specific instruction, he would not be culpable now.
Mr. Freeman, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Nick Freeman speaking to me this afternoon. Some breaking news just in. Within the last hour, the police have said a man has been taken to hospital following a shooting in the village of Lilly in Hertfordshire. At the moment, all they will tell us is that a man has suffered serious gunshot wounds.
The number of people out of work in the region has gone up again. The new total is 194,000. That's 1,000 up on the previous quarter. It means that 6.5% of the region's workforce is now unemployed. That compares with the national average of 7.8%.
Of course, most people these days work for small and medium-sized companies, but a lot of them say they're being crippled by bad debts and are often left in the lurch when a bigger company goes bust.
Essex Woodcraft is a joinery maker in Colchester. Last year it was having a tough time in the recession, but when its biggest customer went bust, it was plunged into crisis.
Left us in the lurch big time. We had to fill our hole in our cash flow to the tune of £100,000. We were within 24 hours of actually closing the door. It got that close. All my staff agreed to take a 10% pay cut, which helped us enormously, which enabled us to actually go and find funding to actually fill the gap in our cash flow.
So the firm survived, but only because the 35 staff took a pay cut.
At the end of the day, a 10% cut is better than a 100% cut. You know, needs must. You have to do what you've got to do, and if you survive, come out the other side, you've got a job.
Essex Woodcraft was one of hundreds of creditors of the building firm Haymills of Stowmarket. It collapsed with debts of £28 million.
Haymills was sold out of administration, saving more than 400 jobs. Good news for the workers, but not the creditors. They'll get back virtually none of the money they're owed.
More business failures mean more creditors are losing out. The collapse last year of the Park Homes maker Omar Homes of Brandon hit suppliers hard. Among them, Alistair Amis, whose small firm in Norwich employs 5 mostly family members. He's £14,000 out of pocket.
It couldn't have happened at a worse time, really. Business was depressed because of the recession, and I think if we hadn't have dug deep into our savings, I think we would have gone bust, frankly.
By definition, when a company goes bust, it doesn't have enough money to pay everybody. Banks tend to come at the top of that pecking list, and the normal trade creditor or unsecured creditor is at the bottom of that pecking list. We do the best we can for all the creditors, but sometimes there's not enough money to filter down to the unsecured creditor.
Like Haymills, Omar has since been sold on, but the debts left behind by their previous owners still blight the lives of ordinary workers. Richard Bond, BBC Look East.
Now, there's a lot more to come in Look East, including